What is up, everybody? Shauna D Man here. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys had yourselves a great weekend. We are back with a little side video that I came across the other day that I've been meaning to check out. Um, like I mentioned before, if you're new to the channel, doing alongside gameplay videos and stuff like that, we are gonna check out some other gaming relating content. Now, this one, if you saw by the thumbnail, involves cosplayer and content creator Snarky J, as we're gonna dive into a video she put out about basically the fall or how Ubisoft screwed up Assassin's Creed. Now, I've played some Assassin's Creed games over the years. Not all of them. I've only beaten maybe two of them. And then this past Friday, we just got, or I did a video where going over the showcase for Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. So definitely go check that out if you hadn't already. But Assassin's Creed is one of those franchises that was very, very much beloved over the years. I mean, they were coming out like insane, like year after year after year. There was always an Assassin's Creed game coming out year after year. Let me see if I can pull up their release dates. All right, so yeah, all right. So the first Assassin's Creed was in 2007. 2 years later, we got Assassin's Creed 2. A year later, we got Brotherhood. 2011, we got Revelations. 2012, we got Assassin's Creed 3. 2013, Black Flag. 2014, Rogue. Also 2014 was Unity. 2015 was Syndicate. Interesting, there's like a 2-year gap between Syndicate and Origins. So Origins was 2017, Odyssey 2018, Valhalla 2020, and then Mirage 2023, and then Assassin's Creed Shadows 2025. So they did kind of go up to 2 to 3 year gap in the later ones, but just early on in the franchise, it was just year after year after year. Now I've beaten Assassin's Creed 2007. I've played Assassin's Creed 2. I never beaten it. Never played Brotherhood. Never played Revelations. I've played Assassin's Creed 3. I don't think I beat that one. Black Flag, I beat that one. It's been years, but I did beat that one. Didn't play Rogue. Didn't play Unity. Didn't play Syndicate. Played Origins. Didn't beat it. Played Odyssey. Didn't beat it. Valhalla, never played. Mirage, never played. And then Assassin's Creed Shadows from last year, did not play, which, yeah. And then there's some smaller spin-offs and stuff like that that I'm not really gonna count towards this. So needless to say, I have not beaten a lot of Assassin's Creed games over the years, but I think we probably are going to start that at some point in May. With the live streams that we do on Saturdays, we may start doing some Assassin's Creed, at least enough Assassin's Creed potentially to lead us up to the release of the Black Flag Resynced. So that's enough of me yapping. Let's check out this Snarky J video and see what she has to say and hear her thoughts on it.
Assassin's Creed is one of those video game franchises that seemed like it was gonna last forever, but its fall mirrors that of Game of Thrones. Hey y'all, Snarky J Cosplay here. If you had a gaming console during the mid to late 2000s, it's pretty much guaranteed that at some point you touched a game from the infamous, notorious Assassin's Creed series. It's been probably one of the most successful, most well-known gaming franchises of all time. And yet today, in 2026, the franchise stands as almost completely irrelevant as a result of a major fall that it's had in the last 5 to 10 years. The last entry into the Assassin's Creed franchise, Assassin's Creed Shadows, is largely considered a critical and commercial disappointment. In its
Yes, um, as of right now, I wanted to pull up Assassin's Creed Shadows. So again, it dropped. Has it been over a year? I remember they kept moving the date and everything. But as of right now, out of the 64,000 peak players it had about 13 months ago, currently just over 1,000 players are playing it right now. So about 24 hours ago, about 2,500, but like so 1,400 people, at least at the time of doing this video, um, are currently playing Shadows. Now, I have my own issues with Shadows, but I mean, obviously, if we're gonna play all the Assassin's Creed games, we are gonna play that one in also. So
first 6 months, the game only sold 3 to 4 million copies, which might not sound terrible, but it was
up to this point, I believe over the weekend, Claire Obscure mentioned they had just sold 8 million copies of their game, or Claire the game. So that says a lot.
against a high development cost of around $300 to $400 million. In easy terms, that means it would have had to sell at least 7 million copies just to break even. It sold pretty much half of that. Despite Ubisoft citing high pre-orders and a pretty big player base, Assassin's Creed Shadows failed to hit the mark. But to fully grasp the scope of the failure of Assassin's Creed Shadows, we need to understand how we got here.
Not only that, like Ubisoft as a whole, like their stock had been going down drastically, and because to be quite honest, they had at least two flops in 2025, both being Assassin's Creed Shadows and Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I did play a little bit of Star Wars Outlaws. I could not even finish the game because of all the bugs that were going on in the game. At that point, I was just like, I'm not playing this. This is ridiculous. Um, they like not only that, Skull and Bones was a huge disappointment, and so it was just they have been having some massive flops with their games over the years, and a lot of people probably feel like the Black Flag Resynced is them just going back to the well of what worked, which I mean, I guess in some capacity is not a bad thing, but the fact that you have to go back and resync or do like a remake of Black Flag, which is probably their more I mean, I'm curious. Let me see. Let's see. Um, if I can find. I guess we could do this one. Um, what was this? This was six. Apparently, this was 6 days ago. Let's see. No, this doesn't have what I want. I wonder if I can. Let me do it this way. Let's let's ask Grok. Let's see. Okay. If I can learn how to spell here and get all this. All right, so bring this up here. All right, so if we're going by units sold, 2007's Assassin's Creed had 8 million. Assassin's Creed 2 had 10 million. Brotherhood had 10 million. Revelations had 10 million. Assassin's Creed 3 had 13 million units sold. Black Flag had 15 million sold. Unity had 10. Surprisingly, Syndicate had 5.5 million units sold. That's interesting. And then it jumps back up with Origins 10 million, Odyssey 10 million, Valhalla 15 to 20 million. So that's so far. Valhalla, yeah. Mirage 5 million, and then Shadows 5 million. So if we're going by units sold, Valhalla was pretty much you could either say it was the first, or it's tied with Black Flag, because Black Flag had 15 million sold, and then Valhalla had anywhere from 15 to 20 million sold. So that's quite interesting. That is interesting.
First Assassin's Creed game was released all the way back in 2007, kicking off the story of Desmond Miles, a descendant of important assassins throughout history, who gets thrown into a sort of chosen one story arc, in which he relives his important ancestors' memories through a complex device called the Animus, all in hopes of collecting important artifacts titled the Pieces of Eden to prevent the end of days. The first of Desmond's fabled ancestors and the first protagonist of the Assassin's Creed series was an assassin known as Altair ibn Lahad, with his game taking place predominantly during the Third Crusade in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. Sorry folks, we're going to do this next part with the baby on my lap because he doesn't want to be on the floor. So essentially, the inspiration for Assassin's Creed comes from Ubisoft in 2007 wanting to develop a sequel to the video game The Prince of Persia. Early on during the game's development,
I played a little. I think Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is the only Prince of Persia game that I've ever played.
they settled on an open world approach, and then they started looking into secret societies to make the game a little more interesting. They eventually settled on a story inspired by the Order of Assassins, which you may or may not know was actually a real thing. Quick history lesson. The Order of Assassins is actually a real Nizari Ismaili Shia Islamic military order that conducted several high-profile assassinations during the Crusades. They are believed to have killed hundreds of people who were deemed enemies of their state over the course of 200 years. With that in mind, Ubisoft coupled the Order of Assassins with a 1938 novel called Alamut. With this, they finally had their idea of that overarching story between Assassin's Creed games, the never-ending battle between the Order of Assassins and the Knights Templar. Now, Ubisoft knew they were on to this one, right? Guessing and establishing different assassinations throughout history that could have been caused by the Order of Assassins. So they wanted to leave themselves open to potential sequels and other assassinations throughout history. This is why they created the modern day storyline with Desmond Miles, having all these descendants that he could connect to, and of course the topic of the Animus, the device that allows him to do that. The first Assassin's Creed game ends up being a huge commercial success. In its first 4 weeks, it sells 2.5 million copies, and it becomes the fastest selling new game IP in the US at the time. time. Even though critics complained about repetitive gameplay in Assassin's Creed, essentially fans were thrilled by the immersive open world gameplay and the riveting story of the game. Right after that massive success, Ubisoft Montreal went full steam ahead with their next iteration. However, they knew they had to rework the system. With Assassin's Creed 2, they went way more parkour focused.
Real quick, I remember a couple of years ago, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I remember watching a video, not probably something similar to this, but this one's maybe like over an hour or 2 hours worth of breaking down, like basically the same thing here, the history of Assassin's Creed, and I learned like it was so interesting watching it because one of the things that a lot of the developers for Ubisoft Montreal wanted to do was obviously introduce a female assassin, and they tried even earlier in some of these games to kind of push for that idea, but obviously it kept getting shut down until we got about now we have Syndicate where you can play the brother and the sister, and I think the sister was the first time you could play. Um, well, she was still part of the story. It wasn't where you could like in Odyssey or Valhalla where you can pick whether you want to play as a male or a female, but it was moving it was moving towards that direction. With Syndicate, with having the brother and the sister, and you're just going back and forth with the gameplay, and then eventually shifting to be having the ability to be male or female. Now, I don't think Origins allowed you to do that just yet. I think they were still just doing the male centric character that you can pick, that went with the story. But then I know with Odyssey, Valhalla, I don't know about Mirage if they deal with that, and then Shadows, you got basically the same kind of mechanic of having two protagonists, as you did in like Syndicate, if that makes sense.
Essentially redesigning the cities of Renaissance Italy to make it easier to free run and move in a parkour style. And with Assassin's Creed 2, they introduced the most prolific Assassin's Creed protagonist in the franchise's series, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. Ezio was not only my first video game
He's
love,
a fan
who I still cherish dearly to this day, but he's also become not just one of the most iconic, but one of the most beloved video game protagonists of all time. He is so beloved by fans of the Assassin's Creed franchise that Ezio gets his story told over 3 games that would later become known as the Ezio Trilogy: Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and we eventually see him meet his end in a short film titled Embers. The Ezio Trilogy is basically what cements the Assassin's Creed franchise as a staple in the video game industry. Assassin's Creed 2 sells really well, but Brotherhood and Revelations both go on to sell around 10 million copies each. Yep. The issue with the Ezio Trilogy is that it's actually too well loved, and it comes as a detriment to Assassin's Creed 3. Now,
yeah, a lot of people love the Ezio Trilogy. Like, it is, I'm sure if you ask most Assassin's Creed fans, the Ezio, probably all 3 are like number 1. Now I'm sure some could probably put Assassin's Creed 2 at 1, Brotherhood at 2, Revelations at 3, or swap it however you want to. But yeah, over the years, like the Ezio Trilogy is the most beloved game of the Assassin's Creed franchise. Now I'm sure there's probably other ones that probably people in the comment section are going to drop in regards to that. So
Ezio was so well loved and so well known at this point that players thought they were going to have him around forever. But then Assassin's Creed 3 goes into development, and this time the studio really wants to move the story forward by quite a bit in history. Assassin's Creed 3 ends up being the love child of the studio that had been working on Assassin's Creed this whole time, Ubisoft Montreal, and Ubisoft Singapore, who until this point had been trying to work on a naval battle-focused video game. Ubisoft Montreal settles on the American Revolution for the setting for the next Assassin's Creed 3 game. And using those assets developed by Ubisoft Singapore, they essentially craft an Assassin's Creed game that not only has a huge focus on parkour and gets some upgrades, now you can use trees in the cities, but they also implement naval combat, which initially is kind of contested by the fans, but ends up being
interesting, because the naval combat that they introduced in Assassin's Creed 3, like, becomes very much beloved in Black Flag. So much that when Ubisoft announced Skull and Bones, a lot of people thought, okay, you have the blueprint was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the whole pirate aspect, the naval combat, all that stuff. You have the blueprint right there. All you need to do is just take it and put it with Skull and Bones. Maybe add some new things, tweak some things here or there, and you have a fun pirate game that a lot of people are gonna love. They didn't do that, and like, if you played Skull and Bones, whether you're a fan or you don't like it, you could definitely tell it's like, okay, this is it wasn't what a lot of people wanted, I guess. So
one of the favorite things about the game for years to come. Assassin's Creed 3 is yet another win for the studio. In the first month, they sell over 7 million copies. When it released in 2012, it actually held the place as the fastest selling Ubisoft game of all time up until that point. However, it is actually the first time that Ubisoft starts to hit on those stumbling blocks that fans love to put up for studios. See, the issue with Assassin's Creed 3 is that it follows a young man by the American name Connor Kenway. He's of the Mohawk tribe, and his entire story arc is basically built on vengeance. He's got a vendetta against this guy named Charles Lee, who essentially was the reason for the burning of his village, the death of his mother. He's a character with an incredibly tragic backstory that isn't all that different from Ezio's backstory in Assassin's Creed 2. The problem is that Ezio becomes a really well-loved character because he's very suave and charismatic, and he's got a sense of humor. Connor Kenway, on the other hand, is pretty stoic, and some people find him whiny and annoying and entirely too focused on finding Charles Lee. His somewhat monotonous voice comes as really stark contrast to Ezio's Italian flair, and people really don't like him. The fans eventually grow to like him years later, but he's actually probably one of the biggest complaints about Assassin's Creed 3, at least at the game's release. Despite public complaints about Connor Kenway, Black Flag comes out shortly after Assassin's Creed 3 and focuses on Edward Kenway. This game definitely builds upon the foundation established by Assassin's Creed 3, but
again, so a lot over the years, a lot of people have said that Assassin's Creed Black Flag it's more of a pirate game with an Assassin's Creed name attached to it, which I can see.
What this game does differently is that it basically tells the story of that battle between the Assassin's Order and the Knights Templar told from an outsider's perspective. Edward Kenway is basically a pirate who gets wrapped up in this battle not for vengeance or for honor or justice, but for wealth. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, though, actually does a lot more to change the direction of the franchise than just doing that outsider's perspective. It's actually the first time that the modern-day storyline almost gets sidelined completely, which a lot of players tended to get sick of in the other games, so this was actually a great move. Desmond actually died in Assassin's Creed 3, so he's basically irrelevant by the time we get to Black Flag. And another thing is that there is a huge emphasis on the naval battles in Black Flag. They really managed to refine the system from Assassin's Creed 3 over into this game, and there's so much time spent on a ship and singing sea shanties that you might be at risk of having scurvy after playing this game for too long. For all these differences, though, to this day, Assassin's Creed Black Flag is actually one of the best-selling games in the series' history. But what I want you to realize about Assassin's Creed Black Flag is that it's the first time that it starts to step away from that sort of purist version of the game where you're following an honorable assassin.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it even goes further. I don't know about it still keeps its same skin for the most part with maybe Unity and Syndicate. But once you get into Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, and you start adding in the RPG elements and stuff like that, it's obviously far and away from what Assassin's Creed was supposed to be. I don't know about Mirage, what they have in that, and then obviously Shadows. I don't really remember much about that, like the RPG aspect.
And it's after Black Flag that the entire franchise starts to flounder. Ubisoft actually started development on Assassin's Creed Unity shortly after the release of Brotherhood in 2010, but they decided to keep things.
I actually love like all the cinematic trailers for the Assassin's Creed series. I really like a lot of them. I loved Unities. I love Black Flags. Um, Obviously the Ezio's is good. We may have to do a separate video checking out the cinematics.
Going with Ezio for a few more games. Unity was going to be set to be the first game released on the 8th gen console for the Assassin's Creed franchise so far. Because of that, it featured a huge graphical and gameplay overhaul. And it also featured a story based during the early years of the French Revolution, following probably one of the most forgettable Assassin's Creed protagonists to date, Ongo Gablogian. What do you mean that's not his name? Oh, I'm sorry, Arno Dorian. Now, there's kind of an interesting paradox with Assassin's Creed Unity, because following the rest of the franchise, Assassin's Creed Unity actually sells pretty well. It's not financially a mess, but it is a reputational disaster of epic proportions.
Oh yeah, this game came out, and I remember I had some friends, like my friend Bailey. I think he played it, and he was just like, this game does not work. It is a mess. Now it could definitely fall into one of the things you can blame it on is the fact that, again, early Assassin's Creed, early Ubisoft were putting these games out essentially a year after year of the previous Assassin's Creed installment. So there was never really that time to just double check and refine everything just to make sure there's no bugs or glitches. But
the game's launch was an absolute nightmare. It was notoriously broken upon release. The launch was full of bugs that were literally game crashing. For most players, the game was unplayable on the day it was released. This generated so much bad press that Ubisoft was obligated to basically give out all the DLC they had for free in order to try and win the players back. But the problem is that the damage was already done. The reputation that the Assassin's Creed franchise had worked so hard to build was basically destroyed by the release of this one. The issues, which were attributed not to a cheap or bad game, but to an incredibly premature and rushed launch, essentially made it so that this game is mostly forgotten in terms of Assassin's Creed discussions, unless you're complaining about the bugs. The disaster of Assassin's Creed Unity is basically what cements the next one as another flop. In 2015, Ubisoft takes the franchise to the Industrial Revolution in London. Assassin's Creed Syndicate follows a pair of charismatic twins, Jacob and Evie Fry. It's the first time we get two protagonists in an Assassin's Creed mainline game. And despite its potential to be a fascinating game, it's a commercial disappointment. People are so pissed off about Assassin's Creed Unity that they don't want to hear about Assassin's Creed Syndicate. It sells only 5.5 million copies in 2 years, which is a huge drop-off from the tremendous successes of the Ezio trilogy or Black Flag or Assassin's Creed 3. And by now, with two big mainline Assassin's Creed games flopping terribly, rumors of franchise fatigue begin to swirl. Ubisoft decides the entire franchise needs a huge reinvention, both across gameplay and the major narrative. And what they do with the franchise basically puts an end to a lot of purist fans' interest in the franchise, but it actually reinvigorates and births an entirely new genre of Assassin's Creed fan. They decided the next game, Assassin's Creed Origins, would come closer to a role-playing game as opposed to the open-world stealth action style of the franchise's previous entries, thus giving players way more hours of gameplay than any of the others had given before. Now,
I think you could. I'm impartial. Like, I can understand. I can see both sides of it. Like, I enjoy. I to be quite honest, for the most part, it usually depends on the game. I'm not really that into RPGs. There are occasions where I'm okay with it. Like I mentioned, I did play Origins and I did play Odyssey, and I was quite okay with those. Like, I didn't know what I was doing as much because I just didn't do a lot of RPG type of games growing up. So there's a lot of stuff like learning, like equipment and like and just stuff like that I didn't really pay that much of attention to. But um, we'll definitely have to revisit. We're gonna have to revisit a lot of these games for sure.
the entire identity of Assassin's Creed games shifts over at this point. Missions are now presented by quest givers as opposed to players moving linearly through the story of the Animus. And this whole game is actually based before the formation of the Assassin's Brotherhood. This game does reintroduce the modern-day storyline with a former Abstergo employee by the name of Layla Hassan, and even though she is in the game a limited amount, each time that she's there is actually way more meaningful than basically anything that gets done with Desmond in the earlier games. The hiatus and the overhaul of the franchise at large ends up being the best move that Ubisoft could have made. The franchise was revitalized, selling twice as many units as Syndicate did in its first 10 days, restoring both sales and critical favor. But here's where things start to get a little icky. You know how Ubisoft is famous, like EA, for those microtransactions? They start playing with that in Origins. Despite the move towards the RPG system really bringing back the franchise, purist fans f***ing hated it. They rebelled against Origins, and
microtransactions are the worst. They are just the worst. Star Wars Battlefront 2 has had microtransactions. Well, for the most part. What I'm trying to remember, what was some other games? There were some other games that had microtransactions, and I can't remember who said it, but a developer or somebody was like, well, I think it may have been Battlefield 5, where somebody with Battlefield 5 was like, you know what? If you don't want to buy the game, then don't buy the game. Because I think people were talking about microtransactions and things like that, and people didn't buy the game, and so yeah, microtransactions are annoying.
The new RPG format. They took to social media to claim that the franchise was dead and that they were done with it, but realistically, this ended up just being the renaissance of the Assassin's Creed franchise. Following Origins, Ubisoft gets to work on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This game drops in 2018 with a storyline based in classical Greece following yet another pair of two playable characters, Alexios and Cassandra. This game had an even heavier focus on that RPG style, but it also brought back the beloved naval battle element. What this game does differently, though, is that it doesn't so much focus on the historical battle between the Order of Assassins and the Knights Templar. This actually has way more of a focus on mythology, as it was known to the Greeks. Despite being a commercial success, selling another 10 million copies or so, Odyssey is highly criticized for the microtransactions. If you thought they were bad in Origins, they basically came back to bite you in the ass with Odyssey. More time savers and some of the armors were basically locked behind paywalls, and you really get locked down into that grind or pay to play in a way that really had not been seen in the franchise before. Now, things start to take an interesting shift. Shortly after Odyssey, in 2020, they dropped Valhalla. Now, people had been begging for the Viking
Yeah.
storyline almost as hard as they had been begging for a samurai assassin, which we'll be getting into in a
Oh
few
boy.
minutes. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is set in medieval England and Norway during the Viking Age. And Ubisoft finally brought back something that players had been begging for, that they had abandoned when they ended up taking the game in the RPG direction. The social stealth element was finally back, and players were thrilled. This and many other factors end up making Assassin's Creed Valhalla the highest selling game in the
Yep.
entire Assassin's Creed franchise. Now, granted, we may be able to chalk that up to the fact that it was released in 2020 in the height of the COVID pandemic when nobody had anything else to do, but the theming and vibes of the game were so good, and post-launch support was so solid that players kept coming back to Valhalla for more and more. Valhalla, though, inspires Ubisoft to try a little return to form. They started working on Mirage as a sort of expansion to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but over time they basically ended up deciding it should be its
Okay.
own game. Mirage ends up set in 9th century Baghdad and basically serves as a prequel to the events of Valhalla. Developed by Ubisoft Bordeaux, which was originally just a support studio, the game was a major return to the series' roots. It
Okay.
focused
That's what I
on
thought.
stealth assassinations and parkour and a linear open world sort of storyline, as opposed to those RPG elements that the Assassin's Creed franchise had taken on during the last 3 games. Even though Mirage was a much smaller game than the previous 3 and even smaller than other games in the mainline series of the franchise, it actually did really well, and it signaled to Ubisoft that maybe Assassin's Creed players were finally ready to get back to what the franchise used to be. Just before the release of Mirage, though, Ubisoft made an announcement that they had several Assassin's Creed games in the
Oh yeah.
works. They made
There's like obviously Shadows. Assassin's Creed Shadows was one. There was there's Assassin's Creed Hex, I think, which is supposed to be something set during like the Salem witch trials. Um there was one that they canceled. There was Snarky may talk about it, but there was an Assassin's Creed that was canceled that I did a video on. Uh I think on the Nerd Talk channel. Um Maybe she'll talk about it and it'll jog my memory.
this announcement in 2022. One of these games is titled Assassin's Creed Codename Hex, and we'll talk about that closer to the end of this video. But the other one is Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Okay, no, she did not talk. Let me see if I can maybe I'm trying to think, was it here or was it on the gaming channel? Let me see. Let me go back. I'm pretty sure it was on the Nerd Talk channel. I am positive it was. Let's see. It should still be here unless I because this was just last year that this was talked about. Where are you at? I think it was like one of my earlier No, that's just Stranger Things. Never mind. I think it was one of my earlier videos. Mm, dang it, where are you at? Show yourself. Mm. I know I had it. Maybe I did. Okay. Can't seem to find it. Yeah, I can't seem to find it. I don't remember the name of it, but it was it had an interesting concept, but I can't remember. I can't remember. See, now I'm upset. Okay. Uh. All right. So, well, I can't find it. Uh. I do remember people talking about it, and I just can't remember what it was called. Okay.
Initially, fans were so stoked. They had been begging for a samurai assassin for literally over a decade at this point.
Okay. Keep in mind, Ubisoft's track record, what they were doing. Um. Let's see. Um. When it comes to the protagonist, come on. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Try that again. Let's just reload or refresh it. Do this. There we go. Okay, here we go. Um, all right. Oh, for the love of, I don't know why this thing's not working. I may have to try it a different way. Yeah, let's just do it this way because I'm not sure what's happening with this. Let's go here. All right, um, so keep in mind with the Assassin's, like what they were doing when it comes to the characters of Assassin's Creed. So you got Altair. He was his race was Syrian, or yeah, his race was Syrian. Ezio was Italian. Connor was he was Native American and half British. Um, Kenway's obviously he was Welsh. Uh, Arno was French. Jacob and Evie were English. Bayek was Egyptian. You had Origins, which were half Greek, half Egyptians. It looks like. Wait, oh no, that's somebody else. I'm sorry. Cassandra and Alexios, Greek. Um, Valhalla, Norse, Viking. Mirage, Arab, and then you had Shadows, Japanese, and African. So,
And finally, Assassin's Creed Shadows would be set in Japan during the Sengoku period. Everything seemed set for Ubisoft to rock. Until the controversy started. When the video game's premiere trailer dropped in 2024, Yasuke was revealed to be one of the main characters. Some fans and historians reacted very negatively to the inclusion of a black samurai as the main character.
now, yes, historically speaking, I guess depending on who you want to ask, Yasuke, was there during that time, but the problem what they were doing was what Ubisoft was doing was making pushing the idea that Yasuke was a samurai. Now, there's some people that say he was, others say he wasn't, and it was just it it was a problem that Ubisoft could have easily avoided, but they chose not to. Now, again, during um during the I guess if you want to call it the DEI phase that was going on during this time, where you were more worried about hiring a diverse, multicolored, multi-sex group of people instead of getting the best people to make a product and things like that. So this falls into that because this game had a lot of controversy, for sure.
Of this game, as opposed to, you know, an indigenous Japanese one. They cited that the existence of
They added Naoe in later, I believe. Originally, it was just supposed to be Yasuke. I think somebody who probably knows more about the development of the game could probably in the comment section say otherwise. But I think they added Naoe into the game later.
Yasuke as a black samurai was highly contested by historians as it was, and they noted that Ubisoft had never, and still to this day has not, made a game with an East Asian male protagonist. This would have been their chance to do it had they not made Yasuke the main character instead. The controversy was a wildfire. While some people had nuanced takes, even people like Elon Musk took to the global stage on social media to attack Ubisoft for going woke and claiming that DEI kills art. According to an article by GameSpot, this controversy was so insane for Ubisoft that they actually chose to entirely scrap an idea that they had been working on for a game set during the Civil War.
No, that was it. That was it. That was the game I couldn't. That was the video that I did from like last year that was talking about this. This was the game. So
that would have followed an escaped slave finally getting the opportunity to confront racial hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan. The controversies with Assassin's Creed Shadows did not end there, though. They really screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah.
The game was criticized for inauthentic representations of Japanese culture, its use of a historical reenactment group's flag without asking for permission, a collectible artifact closely resembling an iconic monument in Nagasaki, and above all, the game also featured the ability to destroy traditional Japanese shrines, prompting backlash about the disrespect of Japanese culture and religion. The game ended up getting delayed twice, the marketing materials were highly criticized, and the writing was on the wall. The game did not even break even. It underperformed hugely. It sold even less than the otherwise tiny Assassin's Creed Mirage, and Assassin's Creed Shadows is widely regarded as the worst performing, worst selling mainline entry into the Assassin's Creed franchise. Besides the financials and all the controversies, the game was widely criticized for a messy and vague storyline, underwhelming and monotonous voice acting, and overall imbalanced combat. Now I ask, having gone over the history of the Assassin's Creed franchise, where does this leave us? Because realistically, if we think about this, right, this isn't the story of a franchise that suffered from a weak launch or two, or a controversial protagonist, or even a few messy design decisions. This is really the story of a franchise that lost sight of what it was. At its peak, Assassin's Creed was never about history or combat or stealth. It was about identity. The fantasy of it all was exceedingly clear. You were an assassin. You moved through history like a ghost. You'd largely be forgotten by time, but you would have shaped the timeline and the world as we knew it, all while being an integral part of something much greater than ourselves, a war for good and for survival that had spanned centuries. And for a while, for as convoluted as some of those storylines may have gotten, every game fed into that core idea. But over time, that identity started to fracture. First, we lost the modern-day connection element. Then the fight of the assassins versus Templars ended up becoming background noise to other motivations. Then the games got bigger, longer, more expensive, more content filled, but most importantly, less focused. So technically, Assassin's Creed never died. It went on to make more money than it ever had. Again, Valhalla is the highest selling game in the franchise by far. The RPG era brought in new players, new audiences, and above all, massive engagement. But while it did that, it stopped being the thing that people fell in love with in the first place. And Ubisoft found itself in the incredibly unique but incredibly difficult position of trying to satisfy two completely different audiences with the same series at the same time. On the one hand, they had the fans who wanted that original stealth-driven assassin fantasy. And on the other hand, the players who valued the RPG element and wanted a customizable path to follow in a game that would span hundreds of hours. And instead of just choosing a direction for the franchise, regardless of which direction I feel is the right one, Ubisoft just kept trying to do both and eventually ended up succeeding at neither. That's why Assassin's Creed Shadows feels way less like a random failure and way more like the literal breaking point of the franchise. By the time it was released, the franchise was already being pulled apart in way too many different directions. Creative identity issues, monetization fatigue, controversy overshadowing the product, and a fan base that no longer agreed on what Assassin's Creed should be. So when Assassin's Creed Shadows launched and it stumbled, there wasn't enough goodwill or faith or trust from the fan base to catch it, and that's why it fell as hard as it did. That begs the question: is Assassin's Creed ready to be found again? I think it is, and I think that Ubisoft knows the answer to that question. The next Assassin's Creed game that's slated to release is Assassin's Creed codename Hex. Assassin's Creed Mirage was a test, a smaller, more focused game that looped us back to stealth, parkour, and dedicated assassinations. And it worked. Not because it reinvented the wheel, but because it was a return to what Assassin's Creed used to feel like. Hex is supposed to release late this year, and the rumor mill is buzzing about it. This is supposed to be a much darker game set during the 16th century German witch trials, and it's also rumored to return to that.
Oh, okay, German. I thought it was okay. For some reason, I was thinking Salem. I think that's what maybe it was originally, but maybe that has changed over time.
More linear narrative-driven style of the games in the franchise before the RPG era. If the rumors are true, we might be looking at a franchise that's actively looking to find its identity again and might actually get to do it. At the end of the day, I don't mean to be an old man screaming at clouds here. Assassin's Creed didn't break because it changed. It broke because it stopped knowing what it was. The future of the franchise isn't dependent on better graphics, more content, bigger maps, larger games overall. It depends on whether or not Ubisoft is willing to answer a very simple question. What is Assassin's Creed actually supposed to be? And more importantly, are they willing to commit to the answer? And that's all from me. I've been Snarky J. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more Snarky J, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation.
Yeah, so overall, thought it was a great video. Thought it was great. It's crazy just like looking back through the history of Assassin's Creed. And let's see. All right, so that was actually a fun video. Very much enjoyed it. I like Snarky J's videos for sure. I did one of hers a couple of weeks ago over on the Nerd Talk channel and Rumble. No, it wasn't Nerd Talk channel. It was just Rumble. So, but overall, very informative video. I'm very much looking to see what we get from Assassin's Creed Hex when that, like you said, that is set to release later this year. I'm sure we'll probably get. There is some gaming showcases coming up here in a couple of weeks, so I'm curious on if we will see something during that time in regards to that, or get like an announcement trailer or something like that. So definitely gotta keep an eye out for that. But guys, that is basically it. If you are new to the channel, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Be sure you comment below. Tell me what's your favorite Assassin's Creed game. Where do you think Assassin's Creed started to fall? Other than that, you can find me also on the Nerd Talk channel, the Nerd Talk podcast, Twitch, Rumble, and Kick. All that you can find down in the description below. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Y'all have a good one.